Opening government, we have MCKL The Beatles. Opening opposition, we have MCKL Nickelblack. Closing government, we have TCSJ Trying, and closing opposition, we have Swing. That in front of you, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister to defend himself.
So today we talk about mensplaining, right? We think mensplaining is an opening. We don't think it is a root of the problem. Right? We think it's a symptom from a bigger problem that exists in society right now, which is the dominant mindset that men are better than women. That the mindset that men have, right, that they are more important than women. I think that is the real problem here, and that's what leads to mensplaining. So what they're saying is, today, as a feminist movement, we think that by going against, by calling these people out for mensplaining, they're actually delaying and threatening our progress to push for equality and gender equality. We think we're actually harming our feminist movement. So why is this the case? So let's talk about some characterization of what's happening right now in society. It is a problem when men think they're more important than women, and we concede to that. But and as a result, right, of this push for progression right now that we see feminists coming up and trying to push for equality, push for more rights, right? I think as a result of that, there's a certain backlash that happens, and mensplaining is one of those backlashes. So what is mensplaining itself? Mensplaining is when a man tries to tell women, explain something to women in a condescending manner, in a way that he thinks he's better than women, and he thinks he knows more than women, and it might not be always true, right? It might just be talking what he thinks is right, but it might not be true. Sometimes, in most cases, women are right. So, why is mensplaining bad? Because what would opposition come and say is because women don't get a voice, women don't get to speak, and men just continue to dominate over women, right? I think while that's true, but there's already a lot of progress happening. We see society begin to accept a lot of women. Like, for example, there are more women that are holding like political positions or positions in the corporate world. And we think that the progress that we've been able to achieve so far, I think it's good, and we don't want to harm it by calling these people out mensplaining. Because so let's look at the responses of how people respond when you call them out mensplaining. So men already think that they are better than women. Men already think that they are more important than women. And why is that the case? This is because for the most part of history, right, men have dominantly been taking a big role in society, taking a big role in like jobs and stuff like that. And that's why men tend to think that they are more important than women in society. We think that can only be solved when women start to step up and really fight for more jobs, more equal opportunities. And that's when men will actually start to see them as equals. Men will actually start to respect what they say. And men's problems like mensplaining, right, will not occur anymore. So I think the only way to solve this problem, right, is to really look at the root of the problem, which is how men think that they are the only ones who can do the job. And only by to do that, right, we need women to actually step in, really fight for their equal opportunities. Right? We're not looking at this mensplaining, but we're actually looking at the real problems here. So what is likely to happen when you comment out on mensplaining? You're more likely to even push them into a deeper hole, right? More likely to push them into thinking that women are really that, like, if they really think so, they might just think women are really that stupid, like, we can't even tell them a simple thing and they just like whine about it. We think men will be even worse when you call them out mensplaining. We think it's better when you slowly push for it and progress can actually happen on our side, as compared to your side where you continue to go against them. Right? They already have this mindset that can't easily change, and as such, like, by being so aggressive towards men, they're actually gonna make things worse for women. It's gonna be hard for women to start to take more opportunities and start to integrate in society. No, thank you. In a moment. So we're going to look at how we're going to solve the problem of women being not playing a dominant role in society, right? The reason that mensplaining can happen, right, is because they start to. How do I put this? Okay, so what we need right now to solve the problem, right, of women being not able to have a voice is actually having people on the upper level society, right? For example, people like Hillary Clinton or people who are actually having a lot of influence on celebrities. I think it's much more important and much more influential and much more effective, right? And you do it in a way that's not condemning towards men, and also not too aggressive, because this will, when you go too aggressive, you actually worsen the situation, and it makes it harder for women now to push for the things that they want to. It makes it harder for feminist movement, right, to make themselves look as the victims, because now you're actually aggressive towards the men, and now the men, right, actually look like the victims. You don't make the problem look like it's the women's problem. You make it look like women are the aggressors, and now it's harder for women, right, to get the sympathy card and to get people to actually understand the problem. I think by calling it out mansplaining, you're actually making it worse for women, because mansplaining, although it happens, but we think it happens in sort of like unintentional way, or maybe a passive way, where men just have this mindset, right, that just a mild one, and they think they're better than women, but it's not that hard to change in reality. We think that there are many men who are willing to accept that women are equals to them, women have good opinions as well. And that comes when women come to a position where you have like women that are professors or academics, right, who have opinions. We think that happens very well when women actually take up positions, women actually take a place in society. But we think that men are willing to accept women in that sense. We think, and we think that we're going to change these people on our side as compared to those people who are really that sexist and really have this really hard mindset. We can't change that. We think that we are going to focus on people who have a more moderate mindset, and people who actually want to defend about like stuff like being dominant over women. People actually think, are we really, like, are women actually not as important as men? So we think that these people are the people who are ready to change, that they are able to change on our side. We don't become the aggressors, we actually become, we continue to progress on the side. Because this point is, women are getting more power systems, women are being more equal in society. Now, we think that progress is happening. We don't want to threaten that progress. We think that government, right, is able to guarantee better work for women in the future, in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your speech. To initiate from the opposition, let me try to lead the box.
Jennifer Aniston wrote a very nice essay about body images and how she wanted to empower women. But I don't know if you watched the Piers Morgan show last night, there was an extreme case of mansplaining. So he basically tried to interpret the essay, basically tried to make a joke out of it, and what happened at the end of it was it detracted a lot from her anti-body shaming image. The truth is, a lot of things that men do, regardless of whether they want to help women or not, end up backfiring and hurting the feminist movement. And as the feminist movement, we think we need to offer an avenue for people to recognize that there are harms that are occurring now and offer them a way out for them to combat these sorts of harms. The kind of privilege which they talk about, like male privilege, cannot be combated with the kind of like soft approach they use. I think the first step that we need to do is recognize that there are some inherent mistakes that men make, whether they intend to or not, and that perhaps there is something they can do, some change that they can accommodate in order to make the world a better place for women. I'm going to talk about three things in this speech. One, I'm going to talk about the progress, whether we have made any progress or not. Secondly, I'll talk about why mansplaining is terrible. Thirdly, I'll talk about how calling them out will change the situation. One, so the opening bell says a lot of progress is being made, and while I like to contend that, I will. So I think there are three things I'll say about this. One, regardless of any amount of progress that you seem to tell us that you have made, the basic blocks of any form of social movement involves like grassroots discourse, the ability for people to speak to one another as equals. In the context of mansplaining, that doesn't happen, because whether the men realize it or not, the kinds of privilege that they live in unconsciously makes them devalue the life experiences shared by somebody else. So it won't matter if the woman has more experience than you. It wouldn't matter if she has went through life experiences that you would have. It wouldn't matter if she has more qualifications or makes more money or has more work experience than you. The man, inexplicably, whether he wants to or not, puts himself in the driver's seat and dictates all of the discourse that happens. This means one thing, the ability for men and women to discuss and speak about things is limited due to the fact that men often put themselves in the driver's seat. So second, we think the women are less likely to come out. Given that I will always be mansplained, for my opinion, will always be unconsciously worth less than that of a man, regardless of how qualified I am. This means the kinds of leaders you want to have to discourse with, also from the feminist movements, are less likely to come out. So even if you make any sort of progress and any sort of trend that you point to us now, on that view, we say the amount of effort and advancement we make at the end of the day will be capped due to A, the saturation and therefore the limit on the number of people, women who are likely to come out, but B, also the fact that men will often put themselves in the driver's seat and often suppress women and their ideas at the end of the day. Secondly, so they say we want to play the sympathy. The problem with this, any sort of sympathy also plays into the nature of mansplaining, because any form of sympathy on the generate for women is also condescending in the sense that you will say that, oh, you are inherently weaker off than me. So this not only does it strengthen the nature of mansplaining, you allow bigots to justify the fact that, oh, it was because they needed my sympathy and they needed my help that I shouldn't be called out in the first place. So let's take the best case of the European government. If they say that less discourse will happen and men are less likely to come out because they are afraid of being called out, we think that's still not a problem. As a feminist movement, we want to seek to empower women who often have their voices suppressed. So regardless of whether men come out or not, we think we can make the lives of women a better one if we offer them an avenue to call out men who have always been harassing them, whether it's intentional or not. So that's not a problem here today. Yes.
Can you explain to us why is mansplaining the only avenue that can exist in today's world where we can empower women to speak up for themselves?
Yeah, so I'll get there after this. One, why is mansplaining terrible? Three things to say. One, people often do it all the time, regardless of whether they know it or not. Regardless of whether you are bigot or just because you are born in a particular manner, people often don't know that they are talking down to the women and disregarding their experiences that they're talking about. Let's give an example. My dad was telling my mom and teaching her and walking her through every step of the way how to change a tire. I think that's actually condescending. Unless a woman specifically asks for help for something like, say, like a computer issue, like changing a tire or some tire issue, the fact is men often think that women belong in the kitchen and therefore aren't as informed about these things as we are. So whether the men speak or not isn't a problem. We think that voice is stereotype that all men who have to conform to due to the circumstances like patriarchy that exist. We think subtle conditioning often happens legally, culturally, historically, financially. Men have a leg up over women in all of these aspects, and whether they choose to or not, they often stomp on the women that want to rise up. So, regardless of your good motives or how much you want to help the women, insofar as you say something that hurts the women should be allowed to tell you that it is harmful. Leads me nicely to my secondly, we think you force women to internalize the harms. Any form of mansplaining and talking down to women ultimately makes them doubt themselves and the amount of experience and ideas that they bring to the table. You force them to internalize the harm. You reinforce the stereotype that this is not their role to begin with. You make women less comfortable to want to engage in the discourse, and we think that's bad. If women truly are uncomfortable, they should have an avenue to speak up, to make the world a better place, to have other women speak up together with them as well. You force them into hiding because they are afraid of being mansplained. They are afraid that if men who act, who think they're superior, will always talk down to them and disregard what they have to bring to the table. So all the harms that you say, but like all the harms that I've said will multiply here in the absence of this, right? Regardless of what happens, all the things that women say will be disregarded whether men want to or not. The outcome of this is simple, that less women will come for this cause, and women naturally will always have a barrier that prevents them from interacting with men due to the fear of being mansplained. Lastly, how is calling them out a lot better? I think 2 or 3 things here. One, it allows the men to detect some gender stereotypes. It's not only men who will be afraid of women. We think women generally have constructed a stereotype of men. For example, if I had a guy break my heart, I tend to generalize all the guys the same way. People who mansplain and people who don't are able to detect themselves, which means you can truly pick up the people who are more receptive to this cause. Given that they have a nature for mansplaining that shows they don't have a lot of reception towards this cause, but men who are more moderate and willing to listen to women without mansplaining them are more receptive for the discourse. So these kinds of things mean that women will now become more comfortable with the men who don't mansplain because they're able to detach themselves from the terrible that women have made. We think we need to set a precedent. There is strength in numbers per speaker, and the more people call out men, it's the bigger avenue that women have to combat the kinds of microaggressions they face everyday life. Any social movement, if you think about it, has to come from speaking. And speaking cannot happen when one party is inherently more privileged and active.
Thank you very much for the opportunity for speech. Now, to conclude opening government's case, I gladly invite you to try and participate.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start off by saying that mansplaining is proof that change is present. It's proof that society as a whole is changing. Because only when the mansplaining comes as a side effect of women coming to prominence in society. Mansplaining was present in the forms of advertisements. You see those advertisements where we can do it too and whatnot. We say that it's not that mansplaining, although we regret that it happened, we are not necessarily sad that although we regret mansplaining has happened, we don't necessarily regret the fact that women are exposed to it. I will tell you why. But first, I'm going to start with a few rebuttals. Now, opposition came up here and said, men put themselves in the driver's seat and they'll start to suppress women. Well, we say this isn't true because while that may have been true 50 years ago, Mr. Speaker, it is the 21st century. At current point and in status quo, women are very much in power. Women are very much getting empowered. Although you can argue that they don't have the absolute equal rights with men, the fact of the matter is there is steady growth in the prominence of women in society. There are more women gaining political traction. In the case, very powerful point, in the case of Hillary Clinton, who is the front runner to become the next president of the United States of America, and there are also more women getting positions, high corporate positions and whatnot. So we say, men put themselves in the driver's seat, and when you say men put themselves in the driver's seat and actively suppress women, we see that's not really true in status quo. They also mentioned, when you shame manscaping, men are less likely to come out and mansplain, sorry, not mansplain. Yeah, they won't come out and voice, and this will stop the condemnation of women. Women will feel like, they'll stop women from feeling like they are always second-rate members of society. Well, we say that this is unrealistic. But the fact of the matter is, when you name and shame these people who mansplain, what happens is, although it might discourage these men from mansplaining to women in the future, the sad reality is these men are going to go home and think I was right in the first place. Negative feedback never works for bigots, okay? So these men are going to go home and the hate is going to fester. What are they going to do? The thoughts are going to be, wow, I tried to explain to this woman, I had the correct idea, but this woman was so unwilling to cooperate with me. This woman was so unwilling to listen to my advice that, at the end of the day, that's why she's a secondary member of society. And yeah, like I said, it will evolve into and this could possibly evolve into more forms of aggressive, more aggressive forms such as microaggressions, not giving women jobs, not associating with women, not doing business with women, just because they now have an active thought process in their head that women, that women are unwilling to cooperate, that women are unwilling to heed any form of advice, and as such, they are not functioning members of society the same way men are. Now, to my points, the first thing I'm going to argue is, it doesn't stop the problem, I'll take you in a moment. It doesn't stop the problem. The second thing is, I'm going to argue is, I'm going to expand on the notion of negative feedback doesn't work.
So if you say that moderate people exist who are men, why wouldn't they question the interaction that men have with women instead of turning upon the women?
Well, for the most part, in the 21st century, moderates, especially in developed countries, moderates are very much so the majority. The minority are the people that question, that are mansplaining. Okay, it's not every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there that are mansplaining to women. So it's the minority, the people, it's the men who are unwilling to accept the change in society that are mansplaining. And we will let them have their say, because at the end of the day, in status quo, we are developing, and that brings me to my first point. Alright, so it doesn't solve the problem, it actually worsens the cause. Like I said, mansplaining is a form of negative feedback, and it doesn't work. Why do I say this? Because as such, men, for the most part, the majority of men are willing to accept that women should be given equal rights. That is the reason women are gaining more prominence and whatnot. And we say that's fine. Status quo is perfectly fine because women are gaining traction, women are gaining power. Status quo is fine. Why do we want to damage it? Why do we possibly want to infest the minds of these men who have slightly or only slightly bigoted thoughts that they are superior to women. Okay, they're not outright challenging women, but when you give them this negative feedback, when you tell them that you're totally wrong for doing what they thought was right, they're gonna start to delineate themselves from the whole feminist movement. They will now no longer think of any reason to support the feminist movement because as far as they are concerned, the feminist movement has maintained and shown that the feminist movement has a form of advice from men, and that just damages the status quo and the continual progression of women in society today. So my second point, why is it damaging? How does this hurt women in society? Well, these men, like I said earlier, is a minority of men who have these bigoted thoughts, and for the most part, there aren't extreme bigots. There's hardly any men out there who say, I hate women should stay in the kitchen and whatnot, okay? The forms of bigotry that these men have are still very, very much micro size. It's just like, I think I know more on the subject than women, than XYZ women, okay? So we say that when you give advice, it may not necessarily be due to their hate of women. But what happens is when you shame them, is it furthers their ideology that maybe these women don't have the knowledge on this subject because they are unwilling to cooperate. So they'll always feel like women are uncooperative, that women are knowledgeable, and it's always because of their own unwillingness to accept knowledge. And this is why there's men out there labeling women as feminazis, Why they hold the door open for me? I'm perfectly capable of holding the door open for myself. It's not because these women, it's the whole reason how men outright labeling feminists as feminazis, because they feel like feminists are not fighting for. They now feel that feminists are fighting for a cause that is not acceptable in society. They feel that women are not fighting for a cause that is moderate. And with that, we are proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Now, to the opening up of this debate, I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
While it may be true to a certain extent that more women are in power, that women, in comparison to many years ago, are a lot better. But we think what needs to happen in this debate is a discussion about whether mansplaining has an effect onto women on the ground, when it happens, and what is the best way for the feminist movements to come about solving the problem of mansplaining. Let's deal with a couple of issues we want to do. First issue is status quo a problem? We think opening government has a very one-dimensional view of status quo. We don't think the problem is just limited to women in general, not getting to the power. Or the discussion is about women and their opinions in comparison to a man's opinion. We think the status quo today, as opening up pointed out in how speaks, explicitly, men always put themselves in a position of power because they're able to demean a woman's opinion by virtue of them being a man. Carl explicitly characterized to you the idea of male privilege and the idea of male being far greater in dominance to women by virtue of people seeing men as being more intelligent or men having a greater narrative in status quo. This is the concept of mansplaining. A man is seen to have a better opinion by virtue of the man being a man sounds better. We need to deal with the problem of a man's opinion being more legal, a man being a man. So what can the feminist movements do to solve the problem? We don't think that their side actually talks about ways in which the feminist movements can actually deal with the problem. And then they just talk about the problem being non-existent. We don't think that they are having a quality debate today. No, sit down. So now I'm going to go through my argument. Everything else will be siphoning the discourse. We think in status quo one of the biggest problems that exists, especially in opening government's case, is they fail to draw the scale with which the discrimination exists. We don't think that every man out there actively mansplains. Means that the man demeans a woman because he does not respect the woman's opinion by virtue of the opinion coming from a woman. We don't think that every man is like that. We think there are men who actually respect women, but we also think that there are in that spectrum a small amount of men who discriminate women and do not respect their opinions. What happens when you call men out for mansplaining? So those who actively discriminate a woman's opinion by virtue of it coming from women will now have to answer to the discourse that exists between everyone in that spectrum. So if you consider a professional body where there exist individuals who are men and women, and within that professional body there exist men who discriminate against women and do not respect their opinion. For that woman to be able to call that man will then generate sufficient traction and discourse to whether or not that man has a better opinion than the woman, or whether or not that man is actively discriminating the woman by virtue of the woman like being a woman and the opinion does not matter. We think that this discourse does not happen if you do not call out the man who mansplains. Because for you to know whether or not a woman's opinion matters or whether or not the woman's opinion does not matter because it comes from women, we think the only way you're able to create such a discourse is for you to call out the man. Something that that side does not answer. Because the other side does not provide an opportunity for that discourse to exist. So we'll never really know if the woman in that question, if the woman in question actually has a better opinion than the man, or whether or not the woman was a victim of mansplaining. We think the other side does not actually deal with the problem.
So don't you think it's harder for women to prove that they have valuable opinions, right? When they are not willing to have a healthy discussion with men, instead they just call them out on mansplaining. But don't you think it's harder on their side for women to prove that they have valuable opinions?
Right. Like I told you, the spectrum exists between men who are bigoted and discriminate against women. We think we are able to appeal to the moderate men that exist, or the moderate community that exists, when the discourse actually happens. Your side does not have a discourse because insofar as a woman has an opinion, the bigoted man who mansplains is always able to draw out the opinion of the woman. How are you able to then have a healthy discourse if everyone on the fence always sees the woman's opinion being drawn out? We think the only way in which you're able to gain an equal platform, there is a discussion on whether or not the woman's opinion actually matters, is for a woman to actually call out men who actually try to discriminate them, or men who actually demean their opinion because they are women. We don't think that actually exists under your side. We think the moderate men do not get turned off by any form of aggression that you talk about, because we think they are actually able to appeal to the logic that exists. They're actually able to appeal to the discussion of whether or not the woman actually makes sense. Something that does not exist under your side. But the second level of analysis is this. We think that mansplaining is a byproduct of men having a dominant narrative in school. That men are able to take whatever women say and twist it, and it becomes far more believable. When Carl explicitly argued in his opening line, or what happened with Piers Morgan and Jennifer Aniston, we think this is an explicit example of the ability of men to switch and play around with women's words and then influence the majority. Why is this something that is extremely harmful? Because on an individual level, it means that men have the ability to shift the discourse of a woman of what other people actually listen to. So that means that whenever a discussion happens in a particular manner, whenever there is a debate between two opinions, men have the upper hand in being able to manipulate the opinion of women. Why is calling out men even better? Because now the evaluation is, because in status quo, the evaluation is bigoted. The evaluation of whether a woman's opinion is bigoted because you're always going to devalue the opinion of a woman by virtue of it coming from a woman. When you're able to call out men, you now create a discourse that does not exist, a discourse that's about whether or not are we actually devaluing the woman's opinion because it's poor or because it comes from a woman. Something that does not exist in this book because the prior discussion doesn't happen. The discussion doesn't happen on whether or not we should actually give it more consideration or whether or not we should not. But secondly, and more importantly, why is this better for the feminist movement? Because for a large part of the modern century, we think that feminist movements have always been drowned out by the predominant narrative of male bigots. We think in status quo this has to stop. We think we need to expose men for being able to influence the dominant narrative onto women. Because we think what is a very big problem in status quo is that people don't actually get the true message of what the feminist movement wants. People don't actually get what the feminist movement truly stands for because of mansplaining and because of the male predominant narrative. We need a platform in which we are able to address the issue of men being more dominant in nature and men having a predominant narrative. We don't think that discourse exists in anywhere on the side of government. Because if you do not want to call out men, if you don't want to say that the issue of mansplaining actually exists, then you are subservient to the issue of men having a dominant narrative. We think that it's always harder for feminist movements to push out the idea of whatever they stand for, because there's always going to be the narrative against them. There's always going to be a bias that exists that whatever a man says is going to make more sense than whatever they say. So at the end of the day, here, right, calling out men is the only way for you to create a discourse that will never exist under the outside. A discourse in which where you have a woman and you have a man. The discourse now is whether or not the woman is being undermined by her gender or because her opinion is really something that does not make sense. We think we are very proud.
Thank you, the legal opposition for a speech. Now we begin debate. Closing house, we invite the member of government. Here.
We from Side Closing Government will be the only side that will actually explain to you what the feminist movement actually want to achieve at the end of the day, and what can we do to actually achieve that goal, right? Because what we heard from both sides of opening is simply this. Okay, feminist movement wants something, let's get it, but they don't explain what, right? Feminist movements are movements that are supposed to be empowering women and empowering men for the equality for both men and women. The argument and the discussion that's coming from opening has been men versus women, and it's essentially a principle that is very harmful to the feminist movement as a whole. And I'll explain why it's later in my slides like this below, right? But let's look at a few things that's coming from the side. So they talked about, so essentially what they talked about is this. Men have a very dominant voice in today's society. Opening government has already came out and told you that's not true. But what we're going to tell you today is not only is it not true. For example, we have Angela Merkel, who's one of the most powerful people in Germany, right? Hillary Clinton is one of the most powerful people in the United States of America. These are examples where we can show people that women are essentially powerful. But the only response that they gave was this: but men are still in power, but we never seen the logical link, right? Okay, men are in power, so are women. How is that a not conclusive and good discussion about equal rights, right? But they further say that we have to call out discussion, we have to call out these shameful acts, right? But what we don't understand from closing opposition is essentially a gender mansplaining only effective to men. Because playing around words does not only apply to gender. When you do apply it to gender, it becomes this. You pit men against women. Now that is harmful to your movement. That's why now, but before that,
yeah, pointing out any figures in power, can you tell me why you're okay with the average woman always being shut out by an average man by virtue of?
Because that doesn't happen. Just because when I'm talking and someone else talks doesn't mean I immediately shut up. Because I can talk back too. But if you're talking in the most extreme case, right? If suddenly I'm talking and this guy comes up and I shut up for some apparent reason, there's always other avenues too. We don't explain why, but the only reason why we're saying this is we don't understand why it has to be based on gender, right? When you and I'll explain. No, thank you. And I'll explain why my stuff feminist. Now, okay. First, let's talk about principal contradiction of the whole feminist movement as a whole, right? We talked about how they wanted equal rights for men and women both, right? Here's how it happens. One, when you start calling out mansplaining, you completely disregard other men and women who call each other things that are shameful, right? Because we've seen other women calling out women's articles of empowerment, women's videos of empowerment, because they are bigots as a whole. Bigots is not based on gender. Being an asshole is not based on gender. There are also other people who are based on gender. When you place mansplaining and you expect and have this stereotype that men will always oppress women as a unit, but secondly, you also stop and you also focus that men as a generalization are horrible people, which isn't true. We don't get why side opening opposition came up with the characterization that men are bad. men are horrible, men are the worst thing on characterization, right? Kill out men, right? But then never came out and he had a reasonable argument. But then again, why is it only based on gender? Why then do we have to say mansplain, right? So what happens now? Then you have men and women saying that, oh, women having generalization that men are all horrible, right? But that is not necessarily true, but that's the painting that you depict, right? That's the painting that they are trying to paint, right? The moment when you have a generalizing idea that men are all will mansplain regardless, and only men can complain about women, then you have an idea that men are against women, women are against men. That is not what feminist movement is about. We are a movement that goes forward and tries to work together to create a better future. This isn't Terminator versus aliens. Women are not Terminator, men are not aliens. We do not want a society that's gender segregated. No, thank you, I already took one. So the narrative you provide now is a narrative that is essentially conflicting. We don't work together to find an agreement. We don't work together to become a better society. Instead, what you have is a conflicting society that has men fighting against women and women fighting against men, when essentially they're actually all the same. Men do call out other men for being, for example, sorry for my word, pussies, right? You have people or women calling out other women, for example, sorry for my language again, sluts, right? These are examples where explaining or complaining or being derogatory and discriminative doesn't only apply to gender. When you do apply it to gender, is when you are completely overlooking the whole problem, completely ignoring that this is a very complicated issue. Not male dominance does exist, but it's not the only reason why, only causation of discrimination against genders, right? So that is essentially what opening opposition, and here is how opening opposition's case that. But secondly, no thank you. But secondly, let's look at what essentially is the harm that's going to happen to today's society. Because let's say mansplaining, right? Men sees it as subjective movement as a whole. That is incredibly hard to explain and understand, right? Because both of them came up with different characterizations of what mansplaining issue or what we're trying to about a subjective issue of a movement trying to move forward, right? That's the reason why we're talking about mansplaining and not gender and not income inequality, right? Gender income inequality or gender job discrimination. But nothing that we can point out. When you have radical feminists existing in the same world, then we have a world where people do point out for just voicing out. But furthermore, it further divides the gap between feminist movements as a whole, because now you have a conflict between reasonable feminist movements and just other feminist movements as a whole. Now you become an ineffective body to be able to fight for the rights that you want. So therefore, not only do you create a male versus female ideology, you also create a divided women and divided feminist movement that is more focused on the idea of what men actually fight for equality. And that is the society that side closing government does not want. Thank you. Sorry.
Is the phone okay?
Fine.
Alright, thank you very much, government member. Now we initiate the do you find the opposition? Yes.
Closing opposition is going to be the first sign of guys are bad at the end of the day. But we're going to be the sign to tell you that not all ladies also get their voice heard in status quo. Madam Chair. Sure, side government want to be convenient. They wanted to talk to you about how women in growing societies get their voice heard. Because there's apparently Hillary Clinton who's a liar, and there's also Angela Merkel. But then again, our side is going to engage you upon the women by existing the conservative patriarchal societies onto how they do not have power, something that's going to be very unique coming from side closing opposition. What are the two extensions that I'm going to talk to you about? I'm going to talk to you about the repercussion and the benefits that we attain and we accrue from actually calling them out from mensplaining, because we get numerical value through attraction and awareness, and secondly, how we create power for women in these patriarchal societies. But before I move on to those, a few levels of rebuttals coming from side government as a whole. Firstly, the biggest problem that I thought existed within both sides case is that they wanted to base their whole case on Hillary Clinton and Angela Merkel. Sure, we do have prominent women, but what about those women living in the patriarchal society? What about those women who don't get their voices heard? What about that lady who's living with an abusive husband and keeps on getting beaten or keeps on getting shut away because like the guy does not really care about what his wife has to say? So we tell you that Hillary Clinton may have a voice over this kind of people, but at the end of the day, they're all politicians. They're all politicians who are going to do or going to say stuff for the votes that they attain at the end of the day. So that's a very bad example coming from your side. Think of a better one. Now, secondly, the principal contradiction, that was a big thing coming up from side closing government. They never actually told us what principle of the feminist movement that they were actually contradicting. First of all, coming from them. But secondly, we tell you that the feminist movement is fighting for the voices of women existing in society, Mr. Speaker. So which side is actually fighting for the women? Their side allows men to overpower the voice, not allow the women to actually speak up, because somehow in society, we all still think that males have a better voice than females. I'll also flag this out later on in my speech on how and awareness. Calm down. Next, why based on gender was another question that they asked us. We tell you it's simple, because you don't see an LGBT or you don't see a black person oppressing a lady at the end of the day. The guy who's the one that's oppressing a lady. Hence why man's characteristic that we want to be debating. All man's amplification through side closing opposition. But on the we also have the bigots who do not want the ladies' voices to get heard. And this is the debate that we want to debate. Mr. Speaker. A world where bigots are over females, or at least men do not actually overpower the females' voices. No, sit down. Now, what is the first extension coming from side closing opposition? Owen did a good job by telling us how we wanted this course, but we will take it a step further, and this is something that we didn't really do. We're going to